Okay, hi everybody. So today I wanted to go over basic use of the lab manual chapter on selecting statistical tests. You'll need to do this to complete your final project in lab. And there's a little bit of trickiness and thought to it. So I just wanted to show a couple of examples so people had a good grounding on what to do. All right, let's go ahead and start to share our screen. Share. Alrighty, we're gonna go first right into looking at R. So if you go to your lab manual and you download the R file, it's gonna come up and it's gonna be very basic. It basically has these tests that you can run through to look at different types of statistical tests. What I've done here at the top is I've created a couple of different example data sheets. So I've added the code for my working directory. That's just set WD with your working directory path file information. And I've created these data sets that I'm going to import. So the first thing I want to do is just to take a look at these different data sets. So if we open it up, let's look at what comp view, what this first data set looks like. So I'm just going to use the view function comp1. Okay, notice that you all will have taken data in different ways. You may need to summarize some of those data. You might want to create a survival rate. You might want to say survived to the end of the experiment, coded yes or no. You might want to take a final height. You might want to estimate growth, which would be the difference between the initial height and the final height. There are all kinds of statistics or summary statistics that you can create for your different data. So that's the first thing. Everyone's data is going to look a little bit different and everyone's going to be asking different questions. So that makes it a little bit more hard to teach and a little bit hard to guide you. And it's just going to require you thinking through a little bit what you need to do for these analyses. So this is an example in which I've had 3 levels of competition. So you might imagine I was looking at some kind of native legume and I planted some competitor in different densities. So perhaps here I planted one of our native legume with one of our invasive species. Here I would have planted one of our native legume with 3 of our invasive species. And here I would have planted one of our native legume with our Hi, yeah, no, thank you. Um, with 5 of our native species. So anyway, we have those different levels and I've recorded in this case the final height and whether I have survived, whether that individual has survived or not survived. So let's see. So that's what the structure looks like. And you can do all kinds of different structures depending on your question. So let me just go ahead and look at a couple of other examples. This is our second competition. This is what it looks like. Here we are just looking at the size of the competitor versus the size of our native species. So our native species is indicated by final height. And then finally, this group, we can say wanted to look at herbivory. So I think I called it, what did I call it? Herb1. So there we go. Let's take a look at this one. In this case, we have a column for herbivory, yes or no, and the final height of the individual. So you can see there are all of these different configurations. This is referred to as a long format for data. So in other words, you have kind of these long columns with all these rows of individual data. So each one of these rows corresponds to the measurements of a particular plant. And this column tells you what your predictor variables were, or your explanatory variables, and these are your response variables. And so they can all be on the same data sheet, and then just for each statistical test, you're going to tell it to do different things. All right, so you're going to run through and look at the data chapter on how to analyze these different, oops, that's something I'm coding for something else. You're going to look through all of these different examples and you're going to see basically how to run these different statistical tests and what they look like. But if you'll remember, let me change my screen. Stop share. Let's go to another sharing option. we'll go over here to the, okay, hopefully you're seeing this. This is the basic decision matrix that we use to pick our statistical test. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, let's look at this Comp1 data set. Say the first analysis I wanted to do was to look at how competition influenced survival. Well, here, first, the big thing that you have to do is describe what type of variable you have. So for competition, I have a categorical variable, and for survival, I also have a categorical variable. So then I can follow this information in this matrix to see what kind of test I want to use. So if my explanatory variable or competition is categorical, and then my response variable, survival, is categorical, I know I need to use a g-test. So I can come over and I can look at this statistical test. G-test is the number one. And then I can just take the code to run a g-test and put it down here to run this on my own data. So I'll just put your data below. Oh, let me switch over to show you the screen so that you can see. Let's do this. Okay, now we should be back on my home screen. So I'm just like, I made this little space down here. I copied the g-test data, run a g-test, and I want the plot. And I pull it down here. Now notice this is set up for your other data, like the example data. So we have to change this to accommodate our new data structure. Whatever the names that you chose for your columns, we're going to have to replace the data that's here with those column names. So if we want to look, we can see what our columns are by putting in the head comp1 command, and here we go. We have these different, this is what our data basically looks like. This is what the head of our data looks like. The top of our data set looks like. And so we come down here and you can see this is a little bit of a funny dialogue. This is for certain tests, just the way they're handled in R, you specify the response variables a little bit differently. So all this is saying is data set name, column, and in this case, it's tree species. So here, we're going to want to replace this data set with the name of our actual data set. So here, we know our data set is comp1, so we can just replace all of these occurrences, or I'm going to show you a quick way to do it in a second. So we can go through, we're replacing that with our data set name. Awesome. And then we are also looking at the survived column. And so here, I'm going to want to label one of these columns survived versus died. And it doesn't really matter which one it is up here, it does down here. So here we can go ahead and start with the ggplot. So we'll put the predictor variable, which is competition, in the X spot. Here we can put it up there too. So we're just going to replace that. So now we have, this is just saying from our comp1 data set, let's relate the survive column to, and now we have to change this one here. And again, we're going to want our, oh, sorry, I did that backwards. I am crazy today. Ha ha ha. Survived is correct there. Fill is going to be our response variable. That is okay. But what do we have to do? Where's my competition is our X variable. So here we go. X. Oh my goodness. Everyone can go crazy. We'll just put our X variable there. And survived here. Survived. My goodness. Okay, well, see, everyone can make mistakes and it kind of gets crazy. The other thing, so this is all together. So we specified our data set, we specified our response, our predictor variable, and our response variable. Here, we've gone ahead and set the data set, our X variable is competition, our fill is whether they survived or not. And we'll want to change these labels. So our X will be competition level. And you can leave it at count. It really is kind of a count of how many survived versus died in some ways, but you could say something like survival, number surviving. Okay, so here we go. We can just run this really quickly. We get our results. So here's the information. This is our test statistic, a chi-squared. Here's our p-value. So you'll report those two things. And we'll run our plot. It's what's over here. It is not very pretty. So if you wanted to take the time, you absolutely could set this so that the low, it kind of goes in a logical order, low, medium, high. You could specify the width of this bar so it wasn't crazy. You can do all of that within R if you want to. You could also do your visualization within Excel if you felt like it. Whatever is easiest for you. And remember, you can always take some of this and put it into something like a chatbot, which will be able to generate and beautify your code for you without very much effort. Okay, so sorry that was a little bit confusing, but let's go to another example. So comp2 is a different form of competition. If you'll recall, we can look at our comp2. This one is interesting because we're looking at how the size of the competitor influences the final height of the focal species. So here, what we do is we can go back again to our matrix. Let's see, where are we? There we go. Share. And we can say, okay, our explanatory variable, our competitor size is continuous. Now our final height, our response variable is also continuous. So we're over here at regression, also called linear regression. And once again, we can just look down these different tests up, and here we are, linear regression. So we can grab this model, bring it down to the bottom, and we'll look at the effects of comp2. So here what we're going to do is I'm going to show you a different kind of faster way. Forgot to switch over again. Here we go. I'm going to show you a different faster way to do these replacements in your code. It's kind of more, I don't know, kind of streamlined and secure. If you type Command F or you go to your RStudio edit find, this little screen will pop up. And so right now what I'm looking at is I want to replace this with my comp2 data. I want to say, no, go to comp2, not this particular data set. So if I want to, I can do this and I can say comp2, and then I can replace. Be careful to make sure you're not replacing all. You can do things like replace within a selection. You can replace all within the selection. You can just replace kind of one by one across this little area, however you want to do it. So I usually pick out the code and I say replace all within the selection. There we go. Then I know I want to change out the names of my response variable and my predictor variable. So right here, competitor, size competitor is my predictor. So I'm going to put that over here. And here, my predictor variable is water temp. So water temp. And so if you're looking up here at the screen, this is just saying any instance of water temp, replace it with the competitor, size competitor in the selection, and then replace all. And then I can do that too with fish count in selection. Fish count. And I want to replace it with, let's see, final height. That is our response variable. Perfect. Copy. Replace all in the selection. There we go. So we've made our adjustments and we're going to want to change this information here. So we're going to want to, we don't need a title. I usually don't include them. That was just for heuristic purposes. But here we can say something like competitor size, size, give our units, and we can say final size, native species, also centimeters. Okay, so let's go ahead and run our linear model. Once again, hopefully you can see this is our information here. These are our results. That's giving our summary. You can also type in ANOVA. Might have to load car for this one. Result. If you you want a more condensed result, something that's a little bit easier to look at and report. So again, here's our F value, that would be our test statistic, and this is our P value. That would be the P value that you report. So I just use the call ANOVA to be able to get to that. That's just an easier probably way for you to take this information and put it into your result section. And then here's what the linear regression looks like. And again, you can beautify that plot either here or in Excel if that's easier for you. Okay, everybody. Well, hopefully this is helpful. Like I said, the most confusing part is going to be just setting up your data frames and the long format, and then just making sure you're properly copying and pasting and replacing things within your data set. As we saw, everyone can make like little silly errors. So just check yourself. And again, your TAs can hopefully help you, but you can also Google this, put it into a chatbot. They're really good at coding now. So it's really helpful to help you troubleshoot errors if you need additional help. Okay, take care, guys. Bye.